This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so thank you so much for joining us. This is the fifth and final webinar of our June webinar series, Marketing is More Than Just Advertising. My name is Leah Steele. I'm the Economic Development Coordinator for the City of Laurel, and we are the sponsor for this webinar series. Before we get started, just a reminder, please mute all your microphones. If you do have any questions, we're going to be using the chat box. I'm going to be monitoring that through the event, so feel free to ask questions there. And we will be recording this webinar. We're going to be posting it on our Facebook page, facebook.com/LaurelECD. Link is in the chat box as well. I'll be posting it either tonight or tomorrow. And now I'd like to introduce our speaker, a local author with over 10 years experience helping small businesses and entrepreneurs. Farah Kami, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Marketing is More Than Just Advertising. As always, just want to do my thank yous. I want to thank the City of Laurel, Department of Economic and Community Development for hosting. Leah, I want to thank you for coordinating all these webinars. And of course, as always, thank you to all those we didn't typically think of as essential workers, but have truly proven to be essential to our way of life as a result of this pandemic. As we've discussed before, these are a series of COVID-19 pandemic lectures and seminars. The content is cumulative, so they built upon each other. It's a very good idea to go back and view all the other ones because there are references made from one to the other. And especially today, I'm going to reference a lot of the content that we've covered before, go over it quickly, but it would be advantageous to watch the other ones as well. Speaking of the previous events, we first talked about reprioritizing revenue streams, repivoting, excuse me. Then we talked about small business business continuity plans last week. And then today we're talking about marketing, both during and after the pandemic. And then the important note about future webinars, please let Leah or myself know. I'll put my contact information at the end of the presentation, but please let us know what types of content you'd like to see in the future, what is helpful to you. As I've done in previous seminars, I want to just talk about, the weaknesses and the threats that we're currently facing, and obviously say that we're going through a very difficult time, especially for small business owners, and it's not going to be easy, dealing with it and getting out of it. But hopefully through these series of webinars, we can give you some kind of a checklist to follow to actually guide you through the process. Just as a recap, re-strategizing for the future, very important to have a good situational understanding and assessment of what's going on currently. And typically in business, we use a SWOT tool, strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And we've kind of inverted it for this purpose. And we're basically reordering it and talking about threats, weaknesses, strengths, and opportunities. So these are some of the specific threats that we're facing with the COVID-19 pandemic and the economic climate right now. So one is social distancing. The fact that a lot of your customers have to stay at home or stand apart, or your square footage is limited in your physical businesses. Obviously that limits customers, so we consider social distancing as a threat right now. Consumer confidence is very quickly also becoming a more and more of a threat to small business. So that includes results from the layoffs, unemployment, jobs having to provide lower pay to keep people employed. And obviously there are talks that we are in a recession currently. So that's always going to impact consumer confidence. And then obviously staff getting sick, that is a limitation to your operations. It can have tragic consequences. And then finally, there's fear and anxiety. So customers are afraid to leave their homes and have contact with the public or vendors wherever they currently or previously visited. So mainly the social distancing, consumer confidence, and fear and anxiety are what we're going to try to address, especially for this webinar, considering marketing. Weaknesses, I'll go over quickly. Small businesses typically have low cash flow, so that means less savings to get through hard times. Obviously, low access to credit. Small businesses don't always have large lines of credits with their banks just for emergencies. And then, like we talked about last week's seminar was about business continuity planning. Small businesses tend to not have those types of backup planning formalized. And then there are some strengths to small business. As you may know, small business is agile. Smaller staff means you have more leeway in how you can pivot. There aren't too many decision makers in a small business. You don't have to go through committees and different chains of command to make decisions. And then as a small business, you very likely have a wanted good or service. Maybe it's not a luxury item that you're selling and that can be afforded. And then you could also be an essential business, which is proving to be very important. And then, believe it or not, there are some opportunities during the pandemic. One, obviously, we just talked about for essential businesses. There is a Made in the USA movement that's going to be, pivoting our supply chain away from, Asia or even other places, just to keep our critical supply chain a little bit more safe and strong here at home. There are government assistance programs that you can take advantage of. They are complicated and it does take time to understand them, but they are out there. And then there are certain goods and services, I won't go through the entire list, but certain goods and services have spiked in demand during the pandemic. And I included some of these, and we talked a little bit more in depth about these in the first webinar. So let's talk about marketing. What is marketing and how to apply it to now and after the pandemic? One thing I always like to do is share this graph. A lot of people think marketing and advertising are synonymous. They're the same thing. But marketing is actually, if you consider it as the big pie, with depending on who you ask, what expert you talk to, 1 to 10 different slices. I've elected to present you 7 slices of the marketing pie today. 1 is advertising, which everyone is pretty much familiar with. 2 is brand management. 3 is marketing data and research, something we don't, as small business owners, we kind of overlook a lot of times. 4, pricing strategies. 5, channel to market strategies. 6, customer service and after sales support, very important, especially during this time. And then 7, public relations. So those are the 7. I'm going to go a little bit more in depth and try to relate it back to the theme of the pandemic and how we can take advantage of some of these slices. Some examples of advertising. Again, a lot of you are familiar with this already. This is probably the simplest of the slices to explain, but TV, obviously radio, there's print advertising, online advertising, directories, direct mail, outdoor, transit, magazine, all sorts of things. And then you can further break down, of course, there are a lot more examples, but even with, let's say, outdoor, you can break that down even further. But advertising can help you address the threat, and then that's the T. I want to go over all the threats, weaknesses, strengths, and opportunities that these address. So the threat, it addresses is social distancing, consumer confidence, fear, and anxiety. That can, if used effectively, advertising can address all the threats. Specifically, a lot of these advertising types cost a lot of money. So TV is probably the most expensive. Direct mail can be expensive. Probably the 2 that I've highlighted, number 3 and 4, are the lowest options right now, lowest cost options that can help with a small business's low cash flow. So a lot of times with online advertising, some of it you don't even have to pay, and some of it you pay if someone looks at it. So that's kind of an advantage. The strengths that advertising can help promote or address is the fact that you're an essential business and you have wanted goods and services that people want, that are in demand. And then you can take advantage of advertising to advertise, what you do that's made in the US or what you have that's in demand. So, advertising, pretty obvious stuff, but what I recommend right now that you can focus on is using print and online advertising because, again, they're the least expensive. And we'll talk a little bit more in depth about those specifically. Brand management and messaging. A lot of small businesses don't necessarily address brand management and messaging. The goal of this is to increase the perceived value of a product or service. And of course, perceived value depends on several different factors: where you are, what time of the year it is, and what time it is in our history. So right now we're going through a pandemic. People are reevaluating what perceived value means to them. Some things that they could possibly be thinking about as far as value is this needed? Safety is a big value right now. Comfort is a big value right now because a lot of people are stressed and anxious. And then affordability. Can I afford it? And you can see kind of a theme there that addresses those threats of consumer confidence, fear, and anxiety. So when you think about your brand management and messaging, you definitely need to be making sure that your messaging addresses consumer confidence and their fear and anxiety levels. Again, with brand management and messaging, it does take money to do this. You can do it yourself, and in order to save money, obviously, it costs you time. But the low cash flow is always going to be a weakness of business. You don't have extra money just there to provide a brand manager to work on your messaging. And then again, if you're an essential business, that's a strength here. Wanted goods and services, that's a strength. Those are things that people need or want for comfort. And then again, opportunities here for your messaging to brand that, send out messaging that your products, maybe your services are made in the US, and you are meeting a certain demand from the list of those products and services that we listed earlier as far as being in demand during the pandemic. Market data and research. This is another one that's often ignored by small businesses, but it's very important for a small business owner, small business leader to understand the trends going on in their industry and society. And also, for obvious reasons, supply and demand. Those supply and demand trends need to be something that you're familiar with and you're keeping track of. So some simple questions you can ask to establish your market data and research. And you don't need like a 50-page document to do this, even a 1-page document outlining who are my customers. You can do age groups, just basically based on your observations. Maybe you have a database already. How do you reach them? How can you reach the customer? How does the customer reach you? Very important to know. If you're doing TV advertising, but most of your customers are finding you online, then you're gonna, it's a good idea to shift your budget to more online. And then what do customers want right now? So that's the supply and demand issue that you need to be very aware of, and you need to be checking statistics and trends on what is most popular. What is in demand by consumers right now? We know masks, sanitizers, cleaning equipment. Those are obvious things that are in demand right now. But then alcohol sales, those are also in demand because they address a comfort item. Or games where people can stay at home and play games with their kids and other family members. So some of the threats we addressed again with market data and research, that consumer confidence is very important, and then the fear and anxiety. The market data and research specifically address some weaknesses that small businesses have for the no backup plan, and then the low cash flow. And then strengths, again, essential businesses, wanted goods and services, and opportunities, again, made in the US opportunities, and depending on what service or product you provide, the demand. Pricing strategies are also very important right now. Most of you should be aware of pricing strategies. You know what you charge and you know how you charge based on your industry. Two things that you specifically need to be mindful of right now is your competition's pricing and then bundle pricing. So competition, because we're going through economic downtimes, everyone's going to try to be lowering their prices, price points to address that consumer confidence aspect. So you need to monitor your competition. You can't let your competition be outbidding you for certain things. If they, chances are, if they are reducing their prices, you're going to have to also, unless you can set yourself apart with some of the other aspects of marketing. But if it's apples to apples, then you're going to need to compete on a price level. And then another thing that's very important and used during economic downtimes and recessions are bundle pricing. So instead of, this is the one thing we talked about, family size meals, kind of more stuff for less money per unit, that type of thing. So you have to reevaluate whether you can provide that type of pricing to your customers. Again, pricing mainly addresses consumer confidence. Obviously, people who are out of work or are worried about the future, don't want to spend as much money, don't feel as confident. Again, our weaknesses here is low cash flow. We can't hire someone to do our pricing strategy for us, so you kind of have to go through a trial and error competition process for yourself to figure it out. And then the strengths and weaknesses, strengths are the same essentially. And then the opportunities, again, you're looking at demand, you're trying to take advantage of those movements and trends that people want. So with pricing strategies, just remember, give deals if you can, if that's the type of business that can support giving deals. And then if you're not already accepting credit cards, if you've been just a cash business, you should seriously consider having some kind of ability to take credit cards. Because during economic downturns, recessions, people are way less likely to part with their cash. They would much rather use their credit. So if you're not offering credit, look into how you can offer credit. And then if you are able to also try to offer financing, if you sell big ticket items like home improvement, furniture, things like that, then you want to be able to offer your customers some kind of financing option because those become very popular and essential during economic downturns. Channel to market strategies. This is probably one of the more complicated ones, one of slices of the pie and very less often used in small business. But basically with channel to market strategies, we're asking what is the best way to expose and distribute your products and services. Mainly, this falls into two categories, direct and indirect. So direct is direct to consumer, and then indirect is if you sell your product or service to someone else who then sells it to the consumer. You may need to think about changing that model if you want to figure out how you can go direct when you're indirect. Maybe you buy something right now when you sell it to consumers. Maybe you can sell that, produce it and sell it directly to consumers without getting it from a manufacturer or a dealer above you. This type of strategy, especially the distribution of products and services, definitely addresses several different things. One, we can address the social distancing, consumer confidence, and fear and anxiety. This includes things like delivering your products and services differently. So if you were just a brick and mortar store before, maybe you've started or you're thinking about providing your services or products by delivery, or just a car delivery or mail, or having a truck that goes around, maybe bike messenger, courier, whatever. And then it also comes into play as far as distributing your product if you had person-to-person consultation experiences. So tax preparers, attorneys, those types of professional services, any type of consultant, even interior designers. You cannot meet with people face-to-face anymore in most situations, and you have to consider that you will not be able to do it in the future in case there's a resurgence. So how can you deliver your consultation services? You need to invest in some kind of video chat features, whether it's Skype, Zoom, GoToMeeting, Google, a lot of different tools out there that you need to take advantage of and have as a backup. Then we talk about customer service and after sales support. So this is actually one of those things that really can help you address your low cash flow situation. And really it addresses a lot of the threats that we're facing, almost all of them. Social distancing, consumer confidence, and fear and anxiety. Examples of this include, and I just did 3 of them because I want to talk about these 3 in depth. Bulk voice broadcast. If you ever received a text message or a voicemail that's pre-recorded, you get them a lot during campaign season. Usually it's 20 to 30-second message, and at the end you have an opportunity to opt out or not. That is actually quite inexpensive to do. You can buy packages. If you Google bulk voice broadcast services, you'll find different companies that offer this service. And what you can basically do is use your existing customer phone database and record a 20-second message. Very low cost option. Very important to tell your customers right now, and we'll talk about this theme, very important to tell them that you're open and you're practicing social distancing and you're giving special deals. And we'll talk about some specific examples later on of companies that should be doing this right now and aren't, where consumers would actually be very appreciative of knowing that they're open and they're in business and they need your help. Same thing with newsletters and emails. So you can actually do, physical newsletters or electronic newsletters, maybe just publish it on your website, or you can just send emails with just regular text to your customers. If you have a database of customer email addresses, that would be great. Mail addresses, that works. And then phone numbers. So if you don't have a database of phone numbers, emails, addresses for your customer, very important to try to figure out different ways to collect that type of stuff so you can enhance your customer service and after sales support experience. This is a low cost option, as I've talked about. Very important to be used right now for telling customers you're open, you're safe, and you have deals. Very important things. We'll talk more about in depth in a few slides. And then public relations. Small businesses don't very often consider public relations as something that they should be taking advantage of or participating in, but you absolutely should be. You don't need a big public relations firm to run this for you. It's as easy as identifying who you need to, what your local TV stations or newspapers are, finding the names of the people that publish articles or do reports that match your industry or what the messaging you want to try to get out, and then contacting them. So for TV news, I just Googled, for us in the Laurel area, let's say WBAL. And I Googled WBAL small businesses opening during COVID. And I saw several different articles of small businesses that were actually listed that were being opened. And then it had the journalist's name and email address listed on the article. They want you to contact them and let them know that you're open. So you should be doing this, both for newspapers and TV news. The other thing that you can take advantage of, obviously you do because you're on this webinar, but Economic Development Council. So obviously you're familiar with Laurels, but if your business is in Montgomery County or PG County, you need to be establishing relationships with them, getting their newsletters and trying to get on their newsletters as well. Very often this is a low or no cost. It just takes, your time and capital. So maybe you can do it, maybe you can get a family friend or neighbor or just a friend, another family member to help you with this. But very important, very cost-effective tool to try to address everything that, all your messaging, all your advertising, things like that. And here's a good example. I tried to put a lot of pictures in this presentation, but so you see there's an article that the Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation republished in their newsletter from the Hyattsville Wire, and then the another local newspaper on the left corner there, just listing different businesses that are open. And right now, because there is a sense of sticking together, people are wanting to support local and small business. So you need to be taking advantage of this. WBAL and other TV stations constantly do video on TV updates on which businesses are opening. So definitely look into it and take advantage of it. You're a small business, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing PR work. As always, if any one of you actually knows me, you know that I like checklists. My book is basically one giant checklist. I like to make it as easy as possible for people to follow best practices. So we're going to go through a checklist for marketing for this pandemic. What I'd like everyone to do is just start with these 3 questions. Start here and then take an action. Number 1, do your customers know you're open? I'm going to actually go through some advertising online and otherwise to show some good examples and some bad examples of this. But if your customers do not know specifically that you're open, you can't assume that they know. You have to tell them. Number 2, do your customers know how you're protecting them and your employees? If I have the option of going to a dry cleaners that has a sign out front or on their website or on their Google ad that says, we're taking precautions to protect you, and then one that doesn't, or even a restaurant that says so, and then one that doesn't, which one do you think I'm going to pick? I guarantee that all of you would pick the same. Just because you're taking those precautions, maybe you're taking it more seriously than everyone else, does not mean your customers know that. You should assume that if you're not telling them, they don't know. And then number 3, do you know how your potential customers find out about you? Very important. Again, this is one of those market research type trends you need to do. Maybe you can just ask your customers that come in, how did you find out about us? I'm sure you've taken surveys and things like that where people ask you, where did you hear about us? That's very important to know. Again, if you're investing heavily in radio and TV, but your customers are finding you online, then you're kind of wasting money, and you need to divert some of that money into online advertising and enhancing those experiences. So start with 1, 2, and 3. Here's some examples of people doing a pretty good job. I have on the right side just a simple sign. It says, yes, we're open. And then it says curbside pickup, delivery, takeout, whatever you're offering at the time. Good sign. The picture in the middle goes even further, and I really like this. Because they just took some of those specialty markers for glass that you can erase easily, and they just put real down-to-earth local small business type messaging. So on the left side, obviously you have the open sign, which is important, but then they reiterate, we are open for takeout. And then, this is part of that messaging that we were talking about. Thank you for your support, for all your support. Things like that, very important. People want to see that right now. If I see an establishment like this, I'm much more likely to go inside. And then I really just generally like we will get through this together. That whole together theme is very important and useful. I was telling the story, I think maybe 2 seminars ago about early on in the pandemic, I was in College Park driving, and I saw, I think it was a deli or a bagel shop that had this type of signage on their storefront. And it said, we are open, please support local small business. And I ended up supporting them just because of that, because they presented their messaging to me, and it made me want to take that action. That's what marketing is all about. So don't be shy about doing this type of stuff if you have this type of establishment. And then on the left-hand side, that's just a very good messaging type signage that just lets customers know, hey, you're not just a business that's open, you are taking precautions, you're social distancing, and then you can put more. And we have examples of signage that does demonstrate more. This is something that I got very recently, actually today before I was doing this. So I actually added this part to the presentation about an hour ago. I got an email from, I'm going to give them a shout out, Laurel Foot and Ankle Center. And I don't know how long ago I've been to this place. I don't remember, but they decided to send me an email, taking advantage of the fact that they have my email address when I registered with them. And it says we're open, providing exceptional care to patients. And then it talks a little bit about, priority, being safe, things like that, practicing safely, things like that. That's great. I would not have thought about this business unless they had emailed me, and I don't mind. I have the option to unsubscribe if I want to. I chose not to because email is not intrusive. So that's really good to consider too. When you do things like the bulk voice broadcast, email messages, newsletters, just make sure you're not doing it too often. And the content you're providing is actually wanted. So I actually want to know which businesses that I have visited in the past are open if I need to take advantage of the products and services that they need. So continuing on down to our checklist, checklist for overcoming social distancing, which is a threat to us right now. Have you gone mobile? You need to ask yourself that. So this comes into the distribution delivery systems. If you previously were just brick and mortar, now maybe you were a restaurant that never did deliveries, you need to do them now. Car, truck, bike, mail. Again, using video and electronic means to communicate with your customers. If you provide a consultation in person before, it needs to be done in a socially distant manner, which means email or video chat. And there are plenty of video chat softwares, cloud services out there that are free or very low cost. So you should definitely look into it. And right now, just in case you may need it in the future also. Are you using the phone as much as you can be? So there was a movement, and understandably so. A lot of people, they kind of deprioritized answering phones in their businesses. If there was a larger business, maybe there was only one person answering the phone. So taking orders via phone is actually becoming a very important thing. And of course, this is obvious for restaurants and things like that, but dry cleaners need to answer their phones. Sewing shops need to answer their phones. Things that you didn't normally take, there are clothing stores that are relying on providing consultations over the phones while their customers are looking at their website, trying to select, a dress or, suit or something like that, because that interaction is very important to them. And then are you staying nimble? It's very important, and it's a good thing that small businesses can be more agile than larger businesses, but cross-selling and promoting products and services. So if you're a clothing store, you can very well be selling masks. That's something that is expected and not a crazy thing to do. If you're going into any type of retail shop and you see masks there and they're a good price, then, I would likely take advantage of that as well. This comes in with all sorts of different things like hand sanitizers, cleaning products. Repackaging is this existing customers as far as staying nimble, staying flexible. So we talked about, I think in our first webinar, pizza shops that now make pizzas that you can take home that you would normally buy at a grocery store, that you can put in the freezer, and then anytime you want, you can pop it into the oven and enjoy it with your family. Chances are, if a restaurant is offering that type of service, doesn't have to just be pizza, it could be any type of food, people would actually buy more of that, especially since that type of frozen foods and things like that have gone up in demand, but we're seeing less of them available in grocery markets. And then very importantly, flexible hours of operation. That's as part of staying nimble. Are you offering flexible hours? And a lot of businesses have started doing that. So one of the things, these are some examples, making sure, and these are great signages, red sign, white text, they stand out and they deliver a quick message. Open during COVID-19, pickup and delivery. I immediately know that this business is open and what I can take advantage of. So they only have pickup and delivery. I know that I can't go in to their store and dine in. I pulled an ad from Google Maps, not necessarily an ad, just a listing, from Michael's in Laurel, if you know the craft store. And the one thing I wanted to show and highlight is the ability to, Google Maps, free for small businesses, obviously you can change her, but very importantly, they have here at the bottom, in-store shopping, curbside pickup. That lets me know what type of services they have right now that I can take advantage of. Curbside pickup, that very likely means I can go to their website now and order something and pick it up curbside. If they don't tell me that, I don't know. And if another business tells me that, or another of their competitors, I'm not going to ask, I'm not going to make the extra effort to call and ask. So definitely make sure you're updating your Google Maps listings as well. Very, very important. Another one, you may have heard about this in the news. They did a lot of PR with this also, and you can as well, but this is Costco. So specifically as far as flexible hours, staying nimble, healthcare workers and first responders, they were letting healthcare workers and first responders skip the line and get in. That's great publicity, and it's a nice thing to do. Operating hours for members ages 60 and older. So obviously, since the 60 and older group has a little bit higher risk for COVID-19, they wanted to kind of provide them the opportunity to have some time set aside to do their own shopping. You can do family time shopping. You can extend your hours for, until 8 and 9 p.m., whatever works for your type of business and industry. You just need to stay nimble. More questions to ask yourself for overcoming social distancing. We talked about this already a little bit, but are you online? If you were not online before, you really need to think about at least having a website, but not just that, but trying to get on Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Yelp, anything that you can do, anywhere you can list your business online and constantly update, make sure you have updated information, is very important. And then depending on the type of business, are you on Apple and Android devices? So this comes into play with the apps like Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, Postmates, Instacart. Most of these are food related that are listed, but there are quite a lot of apps that, like TaskRabber, Postmates even, that include basically you being able to advertise your services on those types of ads. So that's another way that people can connect with you. If they're at home, chances are, if you're at home all day, you're spending a lot of time online and a lot of time on your phone. And then, have you gone digital? So you can Google how to do this, and there are plenty of training videos online. But small businesses can take a lot of doing keyword searches, cost per click ads, and YouTube and things like that. So one very important example one example I wanted to touch on as far as online advertising. This is, again, another Google Maps search, and I just searched dry cleaners near me. And you can tell in the Laurel area, quite a lot of stuff comes up. I was trying to look for a good ad that was filled out, and I clicked on several one of these, and I couldn't find one. So I finally decided to just try to highlight one of the ads that's not that great. So you can tell here, if you go where it says opens at 7:30 a.m., that's great. Below that, it says claim this business. That means that this business is not updating. They haven't actually registered this business with Google Maps to say, hey, this is my business, I'm gonna update the info. I don't see any business. It says open at 7:30, but it also, if you look deeper, it'll say, hours or services may differ due to COVID-19. They need to add something here, and the business owner can actually add it and say, hey, we're open during COVID-19. These are our hours. These are our special hours for people 60 and over, special hours for first responders, things like that. And then I don't see if they have curbside pickup, if they have in-store pickup, if they have delivery. There's no reason that a dry cleaner can't think about shifting or pivoting their services to provide delivery and pickup at home. No contact delivery and pickup, especially. And then, so, most of these ads, and I didn't want to, highlight and be mean to them, but so I blocked their name. But generally, most businesses on Google Maps do not have updated postings where they claim. So this is free. This will probably take maximum 30 minutes to an hour for you to complete. And this is how people are finding you.
Bear, we did
Yes.
have a few questions in the chat.
Sure.
Someone asked if won't limiting the hours that all customers can visit limit profits, since fewer people will be able to come into the store.
So perhaps it really depends on your type of business and how well you know your customer and their habits. If you are open, I don't know what type of business this is, but if you're typically open from 11 to 6 every day, you could actually not necessarily limit your hours, but extend your hours. So let's say if you're open at 11, you can now open at 10 and just say that first hour is for your customers 60 and over, or your first responders or whatever like that. So you don't necessarily have to be limiting it and restricting people. It's all about being more flexible and expanding your hours. Of course, you'll be working more. It's going to be a little bit harder. You might have to pay staff a little bit more, but that's, again, one of those types of things that you can do.
Okay, and then the second question that we have in the chat, it says, my business is education based. Any suggestions on how to reach parents and students in this new education era of no physical schooling?
So I would have to definitely look further into it. My first inclination is to really go back to that first checklist. Number 3 is, do you know how your customers are reaching you? So you need to basically build a profile of your ideal customer. It sounds like you already know it's probably the parents that are going to make the education decisions. You can kind of guess that they're going to probably just be researching online or using their phones to try to find someone. I would definitely encourage you to get as much detailed information, or even if you have existing customers already, to try to build a profile on how they make their decisions to make education choices for their children, whether it's price, what's important to them, price, location, availability, hours, whatever. And then build your messaging and your advertising around that. Ask them what mediums they use, starting with just these Google, free Google tools like Google Maps, or listing yourself on Yelp. On the left-hand side, I did on this screen right now, I did just a Google search, not a map search, of dry cleaners in Laurel. And you can tell no dry cleaner specifically, no website comes up. What comes up is other aggregate websites like Yelp. So if you're not listed on Yelp, which is probably going to be one of the first things that comes up on a Google or Bing search, then you're kind of missing out. So even if you have an education type of business, you can put yourself on Yelp and you can ask your customers to rate you. Any type of business can go on there. The other thing I would recommend is to go on Google and you can Google keyword analysis tool. And that free tool, you might have to have a Google account, but it's free, will let you get an understanding of what keywords people are searching for using the Google engine and all their affiliate sites. So using that, you can kind of get an idea of how popular your type of service is, and specifically you can tailor your messaging and advertising to those specific keywords to make yourself pop up more and faster and closer to the top.
We have another question about the Google keyword analysis.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we're asking what does that mean? What is Google keyword analysis?
Yep. So the one of the things Google was a pioneer of is cost per click advertising. And cost per click is you are not going to get charged for your ad or listing until someone clicks on it. There's also cost per view advertising, but Google mainly uses cost per click advertising. And let's say dry cleaning, since the example is up. If I'm a dry cleaner in Laurel, then dry cleaning is the tool that I want to appear in when customers search for dry cleaning. Now, the Laurel could be part of my keyword also, perhaps, but their analytics tools for Google for cost-click advertising also use geotagging, basically. So if I'm searching for dry cleaning and Google knows that I'm in Laurel, they're only going to show me Laurel results. I could be in California, but I want to know for whatever reason, dry cleaners in Laurel. Maybe I'm just moving there or whatever. Then I type it in. But the important thing is when you type in, you start with dry cleaner and Laurel in the analysis tool for Google, it gives you other related searches that maybe you couldn't have thought of, or maybe like laundry service. Maybe the words laundry service are also very important when people are searching for that type of thing, or tax accountants or whatever. Very often I'm surprised at the different types of keywords that are associated. If you have a home improvement business, definitely use the analysis tool because there are a lot of keywords that come into that type of business because you provide so many different services. And you need to make sure, let's say you offer home improvement and you on your website basically have listed or your ad, remodeling, windows, roofing, things like that. But the keywords carpeting or hardwood that are associated with those searches are not in your ad, then you're kind of losing your place in those ads, in those searches. So you're not reaching as many people. And that's what the Google Analysis tool does. Again, if you go to YouTube or on the Google website itself, they have a lot of training material. Some of it is short, some of it is long. They actually have a certification program if you want to be really good at it. But mainly, definitely start with the Google Maps and then start looking at the keywords that you need to look at.
Okay, that was all the questions that we have right now. Everyone said thank you so much.
Sure, and of course, you can always email me to talk more specifics. I could talk about those 3 questions probably for an hour each, nonstop. So there's a lot to cover. So if you want to just email me at the end, I'll share my info. We can talk about more specific things, and I can give you more specific resources that I've used that you can take a look at. More with the consumer confidence checklist. So we've talked about this before, but are you telling your story to your customers? They need to know. Just because, you may say, hey, everyone knows small business is hurting. That does not matter. That's not how marketing works. You need to tell your customers. You need to message your customers. So tell them you're hurting. Tell them that your customers are hurting. Tell them we're in this together. Tell them you're open. To ask them to support local small business. Very important. Because you're competing essentially with larger businesses with much more resources. And then are you giving customers deals? So your pricing strategy will likely have to change. You might need to reduce your prices. You might need to give bulk pricing. Depends on your industry. And then pivot to financing or credit if you can. Obviously, if you're a restaurant, you're not going to be offering financing. But if you're a cash restaurant before, look into offering credit card. I know it costs a little bit extra, but for the processing fees, but it's definitely going to be important. This is a good example of, so for 2 reasons. One, this is a great example of a restaurant. They just made something called the Gov's, and I think the restaurant is called Governor's Restaurant and Bakery. So the Gov Stimulus Specials. So they're saying that this restaurant, this business, it's funny and cool. They're offering their own stimulus specials to their customers by having special lunches and special dinners and whatever. Pretty clever. So this was so clever that their local TV station, WABI, did a segment on them. So they had a film crew there and a reporter, and it was great. That's both public relations, that's taking advantage of your public pricing strategy, your messaging, all sorts of different things. Your outdoor signage, something that could even be better on this would be that, hey, we're practicing social distancing, something like that, or we're taking precautions to protect our customers. That would top this sign very well. And then we talked about this again in the first presentation, but overcoming fear and anxiety. You have to ask yourself, are you reassuring your employees, one? And then are you reassuring your customers that it's okay to come to your business, to be in your store, to be in your restaurant, to meet with you one-on-one? Or if you go on site to their, let's say you're an interior designer or you give roofing estimates, what precautions you're taking. Reassure them that when you come to their house to take a look at their lawn or whatever, that you're going to be wearing a mask, you're going to be wearing gloves, you've had your temperature checked in the morning because that's what the company requires, things like that. Customers need to know that explicitly. The picture on the right, very, very good sign here. How we're taking action to put safety first. And they split it for our guests and then for our team. So this is addressing reassuring employees and reassuring customers. And it's great. These are things normally that they would do besides maybe checking temperatures, because things like restaurants, highly regulated for health and safety, but the customer doesn't necessarily know that. They need to know that you're taking extra efforts, that you understand what is going on right now. You understand their fear and anxiety. I am much more likely to take advantage and want to support this type of business than a business that I've even enjoyed in the past that doesn't provide messaging like this. And then, a simple sign on your door. You can do both of them. Notice we're practicing social distancing. That lets people know that you know what's going on. You're trying to protect them. You're reassuring them. And also, once they enter your facility, they can expect to have to abide by certain rules, like, maybe you can't let more than 10 people into your facility based on square footage and the other factors that go into social distancing as mandated by the state and counties right now. I'll put this up just a little bit, but seeking outside help right now is a very essential time for you to be bettering your understanding of business concepts. So obviously you're on this webinar or you're watching it on demand at a later time when Leah puts it on the Facebook page. But here are some more resources that you can take advantage of. Starting from the top, I put the URL on, and I'll try to leave this so you can see it, or you can email me later and get the URL. But Google actually has some small business tools, and smallbusiness.withgoogle.com. And a lot of the same things, the things that they say, we talked about already on this presentation. So it'll be a reiteration. Week-long lineup of trainings. They have multiple webinars themselves. The one thing I definitely want to encourage you to when you register, again, I think you just need a Google account to register. If you already have it, great. But advertise effectively and promote your business. I haven't taken this course yet. For this week, I have taken other Google webinars and courses before, but I will guarantee you, for whoever wants to learn more about cost per click advertising and the keyword search tools and analysis, they will cover that in there. They'll talk about Google Maps and all the different things you can put in there. And then the other thing you should definitely check out, they have a lot of good resources. These are advocacy organizations for small business. Two of my favorites, Small Business Roundtable and then the Small Business Majority. So I'll just leave that for a few more seconds, but you can always email me or Leah and get a list of these, or just watch it on demand later and it'll be on. But again, I can tell that you're committed to learning more about what you can do, so it's not going to be a surprise that you'll probably take advantage of these free resources and watch these webinars and trainings as well. So, yeah, and if you Google small business resources Maryland or small business resources Bing or whatever, other things will come up as well. So always try to be learning more, trying to basically taking advantage of the best practices from other people who've gone through this before, who have some thoughts on how you can do it. This is our second to last slide, so we're wrapping up. But again, we talked about this already in the first seminar, but these are some examples of companies that have kind of pivoted and have expanded their offerings, or they've decided to deliver on different apps, distribution, all that stuff. So restaurants selling flour, meats, veggies. Some restaurants actually decided early on, because there were some shortages, like Potbelly, I think, was one of them. They actually started selling flour on their menus, or deli meats, or their vegetables, things like that, so people could get it. Great source of additional revenue. Restaurants, some of them who weren't on delivery apps before are definitely on delivery apps now, or they've decided to offer delivery services themselves to save on the money that delivery apps charge. I've seen quite a lot of yoga and personal training companies, providers before, that did obviously that stuff in person, take their sessions online using either YouTube or Instagram Live or Facebook Live, or any Zoom, GoToMeeting, any of those platforms. Ordering online and via phone. There was a small business that I think it was a clothing shop in Montgomery County that was featured on, I think, their ABC station or CBS station, that talked about how they want their customers, they're encouraging their customers to call them on the phone now, so they can get expert consultation on fitting, looks, fashion over the phone while they're looking at their website. Perhaps, and there are like breweries that pivoted their operations early on. Instead of beer, they started making sanitizer. That's a good pivot if you have that type of ability. I recently read an article about a teenager who was stuck inside with his mom and siblings, and they actually started looking into how they could make masks. And just themselves, they were able to secure hundreds of $1,000s of contracts. Obviously, seems like they're a bit more go-getter than normal, but they were able to take advantage of it. So if you already have a business, you have access to sewing equipment, or people who are not working but can stitch together masks, then that's a good pivot for an essential item. And then again, you can go back to this presentation slide, or the first presentation and the second one, to take a look at the specific different types of products that are more in demand now as a result of the pandemic. And of course, you can do your own research based on your industry. And then the last example that we've seen, doing it yourself kits. So we talked about the pizza. I think Auntie Anne's was offering do-it-yourself cookie kits that you could make at home with your family. It's a nice activity, good treat at the end. But again, I could talk for hours on the different types of creative things people have come up with. But that's what small business needs to do, especially during economic downturns. Like I promised, this is the way to get a hold of me. I would strongly encourage all small business owners and leaders to watch the business continuity webinar that we did last week. I am more than happy to send you a template for business continuity planning that you can just fill out. But again, as I talked about last week, there is a very high likelihood that both a resurgence and recession will continue, which will adversely impact small business owners. Having a business continuity plan is going to be essential. And again, that webinar talks more in depth about what a business continuity plan is, but I believe that it's absolutely essential for all small businesses to have one. So that is all I had, Leah. If there are any questions, I'm happy to address them. Or
if anyone has any questions, please add them to the chat box. I did want to note one thing. If you are a City of Laurel business, as Bear was talking about adding like additional signage to let people know that you're open, or like new hours and things like that, the city actually waived all fees for temporary banners and signage. So you do have to get the permit, but you don't have to pay any permit fee. So that's one thing that the city has done to support our businesses. And if you are interested, if you're a City of Laurel business and are interested in getting your fee waived for that signage, you can email ecd@laurel.md.us, and I'll post that in the chat as well. And like Bear said, we encourage you to watch the whole entire webinar series. There's a lot of good information, and I posted the link to our Eventbrite page that has all the banners for each webinar, and then the link to view the recording is under each banner. And then lastly, I would just like to tell you about, for Laurel businesses, we're actually having a virtual business town hall. We'll have a couple of speakers in an open session for businesses to talk about their struggles or if they have any questions for us. And that's going to be on Monday, June 29th at 5:30 p.m. Information about that is on our Facebook page as well, facebook.com/LaurelECD. And I encourage you to follow our page while you're there, so you can get all the information about all of our free resources and events that we put on for our local business community. And then lastly, I just want to thank Bear again. This is a great series, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be with us and help our business community. Walter, we are hopefully going to have some more virtual events. Probably not in July, but I'm hoping in the fall we'll put on another webinar series or a few webinars for our businesses, depending on the situation that we're in with how the pandemic pans out. So look for those posted on our Facebook page. If we do have some, we'll post those on our Facebook page under our events.
And if there are any specific topics you'd like to see, Walter, obviously reach out to Leah or reach out to me, since my email is on the screen, and I'll forward it to Leah. But it's important for us to know what you're interested in seeing, so we don't come up with content that is not very useful.
For grants, how to access grants. So the PPP, which is the Paycheck Protection Program, July 30th is the last day to apply for that. And you would actually apply through your local lender. So it has to be an approved lender with the SBA, but it's like local banks. And Bear, what was the bank that you said you used?
Sandy Spring Bank in Laurel, very helpful, and made it, I mean, it's still pretty complicated, but made it as easy as possible. And they were very responsive, were getting back to me, asking me questions numerous times to help. So Sandy Spring Bank in Laurel. And if you want a specific banker there, I'm more than happy to share the name of the banker that helped me.
Yeah, so that's one of the programs that is still open. Unfortunately, the other programs through like Maryland and the county are closed now. But I would keep a lookout specifically for Prince George's County grants, Prince George's County Economic Development Corporation. You can keep a lookout on their Facebook page or website. If any more programs come about, they'll post it on there. Same thing with the city. If we do have any programs, we'll post it on our Facebook page. Hopefully, you know, in the future, we will get funding to help businesses as well. And yeah, okay, Walter said he'll email you there, so get the email from him. And unless anyone has any more questions, I just want to thank you so much for attending. And like I said, I encourage you to watch our whole series that's recording or rewatch this as well. So thanks again for being here. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks, Leah. Thanks, everyone.